Hello friends, welcome back. My name is Vicki-Lynne and this is my channel and this is Cooking Vegan with Vicki. So Thanksgiving is coming. Now I'm Canadian living in the States, so I technically get 2 Thanksgivings. Or at least that's what I go for. And something that I really love to make that's very spectacular, that makes everybody like just go, oh, is a mushroom Wellington. So it's mushrooms and onions, some spinach, and we're going to wrap it in a beautiful puff pastry, and it's just going to be a showstopper for sure. And nobody needs to know how easy it truly is. So I actually have my puff pastry. I've taken out a sheet of puff pastry. I have let it defrost in the fridge overnight, so we're all set to go there. And I'm just going to start preparing our components. So really it's super simple. We're going to have some spinach, just because I like a little bit of greens in mine, mushrooms, and I'm using baby creminis. You could use portobellos and chop them up. You could use button mushrooms with some portobellos. I've actually even seen this where you do the cooked mushrooms, you bake some big portobellos and lay them on top and then wrap it, which would be really nice for slicing. But I just like the way this one tasted, just kind of is really good. And then obviously some onions, some garlic, and some Dijon mustard. We're gonna add a little rosemary and thyme, and that is it. We're also going to do an egg wash, which isn't an egg wash. I actually have some Aquafaba here. That I'm actually defrosting. So Aquafaba is the liquid that comes out of the cans of chickpeas. And once you learn all the things you can do with Aquafaba, you'll never throw it out again. So what I do is I just drain my chickpeas. I put it into ice cube trays and let them freeze up, and then put them individually into bags into the freezer. That way, whenever I need to do an egg wash or I want to do a meringue, which you can use these for, you already have them, you just need to defrost them and away you go. So if this is something that you're looking for, some quick, easy, delicious vegan recipes, hit the subscribe button, give it a big thumbs up, and please share it with your friends and family, or make it for them. I always say showing them is better than, teaching them. Anyway, so let's get going with our onions. We're going to chop them up, and they don't have to be super fine because we are going to cook them down. And in fact, we're doing this in 3 parts. We're going to cook our onions because they're going to take a little while down to caramelize. And then we're going to cook our spinach a little bit to wilt it. And then we're going to do our mushrooms. So although it seems like it's a lot of work, it really isn't, because we're just cooking one thing at a time. Okay. If I can find my... go. A little scoop. So I'm just going to do all my chopping first. Get myself all set up. So you can chop first, start cooking your onions. Just to make it easier on videotaping, I'm just going to do all my chopping first, and then we're going to go over to the stove and we'll do all of that over at the stove. Now this is great with mashed potatoes and a gravy. I have, and vegan vegetarian gravies are super easy to make. Because this one is a mushroom, I would probably go with like a beef gravy, not really beef. So you can get like no beef bouillon cubes. That makes it the easiest. You could also use just Better Than Bouillon. The vegetable is nice and dark. You could use that and make a nice gravy out of it. And again, it doesn't need to be complicated, and I am starting to tear up terribly. Onions are just doing it to me today. Now, if you have any questions, please leave comments down below. I love it when I get my comments. Or if you have any questions, or if there's anything that you'd like to know about, I can give you some great resources. And again, I'm not perfect. I'm still on my journey. We all are. And there are great resources. There are a ton of really good YouTube channels that I like to follow. I will start my onions because they do take a little longer. So I did use a little olive oil just to brown them. You could use water. I probably should have. I also have veggie stock. I could have put them in. So I'm just going to get these going while I chop my mushrooms because they are going to take a while. So we're just going to turn our pan on high just to get them going, and then we'll turn them down so that they can caramelize. That way I don't have to dirty another pan. So I have my mushrooms, and I would just chop them. I'm going to slice mine, so in half. Slice them in half first. You can line them up. You can rough chop them instead, because they are going to just cook down, so it's not really a big deal. I like to leave them like half moons, just because they add a nice little kind of bite to it. You get a little bit of a piece, as opposed to chopping them down and them being very, very small. All right, so we're just going to finish up with our mushrooms. Now, if there's any recipes you'd like me to veganize for you, or if you have any questions regarding, Thanksgiving coming up, or any kind of recipes that you're looking for, if I don't have a recipe, I can definitely show you or forward you to somebody that has a great recipe. Okay, so now our mushrooms are done. We can hear our onions cooking away back here. So I've turned the heat down a little bit, and we're just going to let these caramelize and cook down, because we basically want the interior of this to be cooked. And then we're going to let the mushrooms, onions, and spinach all cool down, because we don't want to put that on the hot puff pastry, because it will just melt it a little bit. So it won't give it that crispness on the bottom. The other thing is that most, and you do have to check the recipes, but say Pepperidge Farm, etc., the puff pastry with them, and again, check, because it might be different from state to state, but here, like crescent rolls and the puff pastry, phyllo dough, stuff like that, they were all accidentally vegan. But always check the labels, because it'll be just that one time that you don't check, and that's there'll be something in it. So we're just going to let our onions are going to continue to cook down. And it's starting to smell really good. I don't know about you, but I love smell of onions. And we're going to add a little bit of garlic to this. So you could add a couple of cloves of garlic, or I'm just going to add a couple of teaspoons of this minced garlic. You can tell I shop at Costco, and I do like it garlicky. Perfect. And then we can let those flavors melt together with the onions. I love onions. They add such, and garlic. They add such great flavor. Okay, so now our mushrooms have been cooking for about 15 minutes. They're softened, slightly caramelized, which are great. We're going to leave the pan on. We're just going to put them in a bowl because we want them to cool. All right, all set. So we're going to use the same pan, put it back on the put it back on the heat. I'm going to add a little bit of water because I'm going to saute our spinach. And if you didn't like spinach, just don't put it in. You could always sub something else, I'm sure. I've just always used spinach. And we all know how much spinach wilts down. So I'm actually just gonna, I'll cook it all. And if I don't use it all, that's okay. I'll use it in my breakfasts this week. And I know, plastic. I'm still working on that. Sometimes it's hard to find spinach. So now we're just going to cook our spinach down. Turn the heat up a little bit. And we'll add that into our onions, and then we'll move on and do our mushrooms. So I'm just going to salt and pepper the spinach. I like to add layers of flavors while I'm cooking. If you're not using salt, then I would just use some of maybe the no salt seasoning that I get from Costco. And again, you just do whatever. So we're just trying to get all the water out of here. Okay, so we have that cooked down. There's still a little bit of water in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to strain it. Just to let the excess water. Because again, we do want the inside of our filling. I'm just going to use a little bit of water here for the mushrooms. We do want the inside of our filling to be dry because of the puff pastry. So same pan, we're going to put in all of our mushrooms. And I am going to salt and pepper my mushrooms at this point because I do want them to release their juices and cook down. But I am going to wait till they're partially cooked, and then I'll add in the rosemary and the thyme. Now, if there's other flavors you want, you know what would be really good in this too? Sage would be lovely in this. And give it that Thanksgiving kind of feel. And again, this isn't just a Thanksgiving meal, obviously. You can cook it anytime you want. So now we'll just let those cook down. Okay, so our mushrooms are cooking down. There's still water in the pan, so we're going to make sure that that all cooks out. But now's a good time to add the rosemary. And with any dry herb, it's always good to crush it in your fingers. If I can get the lid off, there we go. And it just kind of releases the oils, kind of gives it more life. So we're just going to and I'm going to say a teaspoon. Okay. And I'm going to say about a tablespoon for the thyme, because we would actually want the thyme to be the predominant spice in this herb. Now we're getting where we want to be. So when we get ready to do the puff pastry, we'll want our oven at 400. But as I said before, we're going to let this all cool down before we put it into our puff pastry. And puff pastry is super easy. You could actually even get the shells. I've seen them, the puff pastry shells. You could actually get those and make these and have them like almost individual tarts. That would be super fun, really good for parties, if we ever have parties again or people over. Oh, see, now you can smell that rosemary, the thyme, and now this is pretty well done. I'm going to add a little bit of Dijon mustard, just to give it a little tartness. I'm going to say about a teaspoon. Mix that in. I wish we had smell-o-vision because this is amazing. Okay, so we're just going to add our mushrooms in with our rest, and then we're going to let everything cool. Very important. Don't forget that step. Cooling is everything in this. So I'm just going to mix it all together. Sorry, let me bring you in the middle of the camera. Just going to mix this all together with the spinach and the onions. Okay. All right. And every once in a while, give it a toss. And you know what? The best thing right now is to give this a try and just to see if it's missing anything or if it needs anything. Let me try to get everything. I would say a little bit of thyme. So maybe half a teaspoon? Yeah, I'll say half a teaspoon. And I'm going to add a little bit more salt. So now we're just going to let this cool. Okay, so now we're going to finish our mushroom Wellington. So I have our puff pastry, and again, get them in any freezer section. Just double check the ingredients. So we have a nice little thing. I'm just going to roll it out a little bit. Actually, I think I'll turn it this way and roll it out. And we're just going to roll it out a little bit further. And now we have our oven preheating at 400 degrees. And we're just going to make sure that we don't want it to stick. And so these puff pastries are great, easy to use. Sometimes. All right. Okay, so now we're just going to put our filling in the middle. And now we've let our filling cool so that we're not going to have any issues with it warming up the puff pastry, because that's the best way to do it. And you're just going to make a little log in the middle. Pull it together. Try to fill it up as much as possible. There we go. Okay. So then what we're going to do is we're just going to bring it together. So we're going to bring the back ends and the front end in, just so it has a place to, and you can pull it a little bit. Now, if you're having more people, obviously for dinner, you're going to need to make a couple of these, but you saw how simple it is. We're just going to pinch this all together. And what we're going to do is we're going to roll it over, and we're going to put it on our, I have a silpat here, and we're going to get a very sharp knife. So we're just going to make some indentations just so the puff pastry can work and puff up. We'll do it this way. And this will just let some steam escape, and so that the puff pastry will crisp up nicely. So now we're going to use our Aquafaba that we have, which we've already discussed. Just trying to find a brush. There we go. Sorry. So we're just going to brush this on. And this is going to give us like an egg wash. Okay. So we have our oven preheating at 400. There we go. And then we're just, so this actually took like 1 ice cube of Aquafaba. So if you're freezing your Aquafaba, you'll know, but you can use it for other things. There we go. So now we're just going to put this in the oven at 450 degrees, probably for between 20 and 30 minutes until it puffs up and it is brown and golden. So when we come out of the oven, I'll let you know the exact cooking time, because again, it does vary between ovens. So we'll see you when we finish.